It's called Fancy Farm, which is a weird name, I know, but take my word for it. Even though it's called Fancy Farm, it's really important in politics. Fancy Farm is a Kentucky politics tradition. It's one of these things where everybody talks, and it's expected to always get a little raucous, get a little insulting. But everybody's expected to be in good humor. And if you are not good at an event like Fancy Farm in Kentucky, you really can't play in big-time Kentucky politics. But this is a guy named Adam Edelin. Adam Edelin is a Democratic politician in Kentucky. He already holds statewide office there. And it turns out Adam Edelin isn't just good in a venue like Fancy Farm. I think, this is just my opinion, but I think he is the best Southern Democratic politician I have seen speak at an event like this since, like, John Edwards before he became a terrifying creep. Since Ann Richards, since Bill Clinton in his prime. I think this guy is that good. I think he's that caliber. Watch him. Watch this guy.
We can do big, important things in Kentucky when we get beyond mindless, empty, cotton candy rhetoric and get about the business of changing people's lives. Folks, that's what's at stake this election. Kicking 500,000 Kentuckians off the insurance rolls with the stroke of a pen is callous, and it's not Christian. Maybe this side of the aisle should put down the books of Ayn Rand and pick up the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So let's have it out. Let's make sure that when we look at this battle we've got this fall, that it's not a dispute between Republicans and Democrats. My friends, this is the difference between the mainstream and the extreme. Values that say we understand we owe a little something. Against the law of the jungle, we are the law of the land. Folks, for the next 94 days, stand up and elect Jack Conway in this outstanding Democratic ticket and reject the politics of cynicism and division. Thank you all, and God bless you.
His name is Adam Edelin, and he's speaking at Fancy Farm in Kentucky. That was him just a couple of weeks ago. And he is the man who, it looks like, may be on track to take Rand Paul's Senate seat away from him. That line that he gave about the Rand Paul side of the aisle needing to put down the books of Ayn Rand and pick up the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. One longtime Kentucky columnist called that the best line he has ever heard at Fancy Farm, ever, from anyone. So watch this guy, Adam Edelin in Kentucky. Right now, he's the auditor in the state, but everybody thinks he's going to be the guy who next year takes Rand Paul's Senate seat away from him and makes that U.S. Senate seat Democratic again. Great candidate, great talent, huge future potential. And so, therefore, obviously, he must be stopped. This guy really is only the state auditor now, but Rand Paul sent his top political operative, his campaign manager, his dad's presidential campaign manager, to go run the Republican candidates race against Adam Edelin. I mean, most U.S. senators and presidential candidates don't care about a state auditor's race in their home state. But Rand Paul really has to try to stop this guy, has to try to stop this, like, next Bill Clinton seeming guy before he poses a threat of really taking Rand Paul's lunch money in the 2016 Senate race. So in addition to his responsibilities running the Rand Paul for President super PAC, the guy with Rand Paul there, the guy in the Ron Paul T-shirt, his name is Jesse Benton. He was also dispatched to go run the Republican state auditor campaign in Kentucky, to go run this campaign against Adam Edelin and bloody him up a little bit. He was running that low-level state campaign until Jesse Benton got indicted. And that's why the headlines in Kentucky state politics were so apocalyptic when those indictments came down, when those three Ron Paul, Rand Paul operatives got indicted earlier this month in that bribery scandal. Turns out those guys who got this federal indictment against them, they're not just leftovers from the Ron Paul 2012 presidential campaign. Two of them run the Rand Paul for President super PAC. And one of them, in a really high-stakes year for Kentucky Republicans, one of them is the key operative in all of Republican politics in Kentucky, from Rand Paul to Mitch McConnell to this effort to try to spike the career of the Democrat who Kentucky Republicans are really most afraid of in terms of the way he's going to move up. Jesse Benton had been dispatched to do all of that, to try to help Rand Paul. He had to step down from everything, though, to fight these federal charges laid against him. He pled not guilty yesterday in federal court in Iowa. Jesse Benton says he will clear his name. But of course, with that big political gun no longer pointing at him, Adam Eatlin's path looks brighter and clearer than ever for this Democratic star-to-be to run against Rand Paul to try to take away his Senate seat next year. And that brings us to the other big problem for Rand Paul right now, which is why there is, I think, good reason to believe that Rand Paul might reasonably quit the presidential race as early as this weekend. And that's because tomorrow, Rand Paul has to be home in Kentucky trying to persuade 2/3 of the Republican Party in that state. 2/3 of the Republican Party's executive committee, which is like 340 people. He has to be home in Kentucky tomorrow, off the campaign trail, instead trying to persuade his home state, home party to vote to do something that would be a huge favor to him, but it would be terrible for Kentucky Republicans. And I don't think there's any reason to believe he's going to get that vote. And I think that might mean he's going to have to quit. And I'll explain why next.